Well, Tom, if I was in the movie emulation,
Yes.
I'm just trying to think of a movie where some guy lays on the beach all day and pretty much does nothing but catch rays and has,
Right.
has some ice water and eats shrimp and lobster. Boy, if I could find a movie like that, I'd want to be on emulation.
But see, that's the thing about emulation that spurred me to do it. The idea that there is no experience worth having where conflict isn't involved. So lying on the beach, the problem with that movie is it's boring.
I'm 56 years old. I've had a little too much conflict in my life already. I need to get to the beach. You're young. How old are you, Tom? 26?
25.
25. I was close. Well, I'm kind of curious. You mentioned Spielberg. You mentioned Bruckheimer, Kopelson. How old were they when they started doing things like you're doing right now? You actually started this at 18.
I do this thing where I'll go on the Internet Movie Database page, and I'll take the year they were born, and I'll subtract it from their first credit on the Internet Movie Database, which is just, like Harrison Ford, his first role was as a bellhop. And I'm not sure of the movie, but all he does is he walks in as a bellhop. And I'll take that credit, and then I'll find the role that made them big. So using Harrison Ford as an example, his first credit was when he was 25. Then what I'll do is I'll say, okay, well, what was their breakout role? And for Harrison Ford, it was Han Solo in Star Wars. He was 25 when he had that first cameo role, when he was playing the bellhop. He was 35 by the time he got to play Han Solo. And what I find interesting is that from the time of their first credit to their breakout success, it's usually 10 years. None of those guys, it seems like, had a breakout success for 10 years. Bruce Willis is the same, another action star. He came on the scene, again, I couldn't tell you his first credit, but it was something akin to, playing the cab driver, or the walk-on role. And then, of course, his breakout role would have been Die Hard. And between those two roles, about 10 years, he was 33 when he got Die Hard. So I always do this thing, and you make those natural comparisons, and you say, well, okay, I've still got some time, You
got lots of time.
Yeah, and that's what keeps you going, as far as I can do this. I feel a lot of confidence that we can make this happen.
You are listening to Johnstown Live with Ralph DeMarco on 1490 WNTJ News Talk, Johnstown. Our guest on this morning's show is local resident Tom Getty. Tom owns his own picture company called Acrolite Pictures, and we are discussing one of the films that he's already made called Emulation. We're not going to give away the ending, but it's a story about a company that puts you in a movie, the movie of your choice, and you live your life through that movie. Did I get that right, Tom?
Yes, sir. In fact, that's better than I could have put it. I just sitting here realizing, I thought, wow, I should have came to you whenever I was writing the cover on the DVD box.
Well, if you ever need a cab driver,
yeah, exactly.
Someone to stand in the corner, I'm not too smart, but I can look pretty for you.
Good,
You know what I mean?
Good.
Tom, so you got this all happening, and you obviously have aspirations of becoming very successful at all this, correct?
Yes.
Anything else we should know of? Now, I'm kind of curious. I'm going to try to give you an example. To make money, I put a couple dollars away, then I put a couple more dollars away, and they build.
Yes.
And I have a portfolio, and eventually I have some money at the end of it.
Yes.
I'm getting the feeling that everything you've done, right back to elementary school, middle school, you've kept everything. So you have a portfolio from infancy
Yes.
to right now with emulation, and you've got all these things in your portfolio, and you never know when you're going to need to pull them out and use them. Is that correct in that industry?
Do you mean in terms of you kind of like a vanity reason, or as inspiration?
A professional reason.
Okay. Well, my father was the one that got me started on this. Any kind of scrap of paper that I would draw, he would put it in a file. And so
he's a lawyer. They're like that.
Yeah. Okay. Exactly. So
good for
yes,
you and good for him.
He would
You know what? You hang on to that thought, because right now we're going to give a shout out to your dad, because I know your dad very well, Chuck Getty, and he's just a great guy. So let's say hello to your dad here right now.
Dad, he is in fact, I would say this, he's playing the president in Rising Fear. Now, he's not the best actor.
Don't get too far ahead of me right now.
Okay, I won't, but he's, he and my mother are my biggest fans, number one. Number two, my biggest supporters.
And shout out to Mom while we're at
too. So they're the ones that they're the champions. So what were we talking about? We were I got lost.
See how you filmmakers are?
I got lost.
Your minds wander all over the
Yes.
place. So now we're at the point where you've finished emulation. You've got this portfolio you've built, and that portfolio, like you know more about it than I do. Would a producer, director, whomever, actor, go to their portfolio, and like maybe 10 years from now, there might be something in emulation that you might want to use or bring out? Is that possible?
I know what you're talking about now. First off, I would love to remake emulation. I mean,
They do that every day.
You're always thinking about, the next 3 movies, and you're always thinking about, if you had a bigger budget. So, of course, I'm very particular about keeping that kind of portfolio.
Well, the script of emulation eventually led to the script for Rising Fear, which is now where you're at, right? That's where
the film of emulation, and that when I was done with it, I decided, okay, we're back to what I did with it when I'm done. When I was done with it, the summer I moved home from college, and I really wanted to get it out there, and so I sent it to a bunch of producers. And when you send anything to Hollywood, the majority of it's coming back, not because of quality reasons, but because they're sticklers about not getting sued. And so they send it back to you.
That's a good reason.
Right, that's a good reason. And they send it back to you with a very stern form letter saying, this hasn't been opened, we don't want to... I guess the thinking goes, if I sent them emulation with, and they watched it, and then 2-3 years later they came out with a movie like it, then I could sue them and, retire to Florida. So they don't want that to happen.
Well, if I see anything that reminds me of emulation and you sue them and you make some money,
right,
I get a finder's fee.
Okay.
Right.
I'll share it with you.
Okay, enough of that. We're digressing now.
So what I did, but one came back, and I got a phone call, and it was I got an email, and it was from a man by the name of Arnold Copelson. And if you're not familiar with Hollywood producers, I guarantee you'll be familiar with some of his films. He made Platoon with Charlie Sheen. He made Eraser with Arnold Schwarzenegger, The Fugitive, Seven with Brad Pitt. And he was the one who discovered Brad Pitt, actually. U.S. Marshals with Tommy Lee Jones. I mean, just a roster of hits. And it was a Sunday night, and I was feeling a little down because I was getting all these form letters back, rejection letters.
Exactly, like Dear John letters, only
Yes.
like in the movies.
Yes. And I want to say not rejection letters, but, a lot of unopened movies.
That would be rejection, Tom.
I get this email from Arnold Copelson saying, call me at this number. And my first thought was, oh, great, I'm getting sued. Because the plot of emulation, one could argue, is very inspired by The Fugitive. Because it's a fugitive plot. I thought, great, I'm getting sued. So I called him, and the first thing he said was, Tom, is this Tom Getty? I said, yes. And he said, I just wanted to tell you, you have a very big future in this industry. It was the call that I'd been waiting for since I was 8. And I first finished my first story, and my sister and I tried sending it off to Disney because it was a sequel to Toy Story. And it had been the call I was waiting for. And he said, now, I can't get you $60 million, the budget of $60 million, but I can get you 10. And I said, no, I'm thinking $10. I said, $10? He said, no, $10 million. I said, well, that's a little too small for me, because Emulation was made with nothing. $10 million, that's the moon. So anyways, we talked. I don't remember what we talked about. But he said, I want to work with you on your next film. I said, okay, great. So we developed a script. And I spent about a year and a half developing it and went through a number of name changes and a number of revisions and everything. And he had me out to his house to discuss it and everything in L.A. And, of course, coming from Johnstown, it was such a culture shock to be in L.A. And we talked about it. And, ultimately he passed on it. And he said, this isn't for me. He said, but I urge you to continue with it. And so I thought, okay, what can I do with this script? It was an action script. And I ultimately decided to call it Rising Fear. But the cinch in this plot that I'm telling you, or this story, what really lit my fire was I met Tom Cruise. And I met him when he was filming the Jack Reacher movie down in Pittsburgh. It was a warm January night. And a girl I was with at the time said, we have to go watch Tom Cruise film a movie. I thought, who cares? You're not going to be able to see anything. Well, later that night, he walked across the street to everybody, and it was a surreal moment. And he shook my hand, because the girl said, Tom Cruise. She said, meet the other Tom Getty.
Those girls are like that, aren't they?
Right. It was great, because I would have been too shy to do that, but she moved us through the crowd, and she introduced us, and he shook my hand like I was a long-lost brother. And, and that's why he's a star, because he can make people feel that way. But anyways, I thought to myself, this is what I want to be. This is who I want to be. Not Tom Cruise, but something like that. And I thought, I'm going to set up Rising Fear not as a big budget blockbuster, but as a small indie action film with me as the star. So I'm going to create this as a vehicle for me, kind of like what Sylvester Stallone did with Rocky. Rocky didn't start out as a $40 million movie. It was a $1 million movie. And they didn't want Sylvester Stallone. So that brings us up to Rising Fear.
Well, Tom, let me say this to you. You mentioned about actually being in Pittsburgh and, Tom Cruise was there filming a movie. I'm going to give you a little movie fact about the state of Pennsylvania that you may or may not know.
Okay.
The state of Pennsylvania is the 5th largest state where movies are made.
Yes, exactly. Another reason why
there's a lot more movies made in Pennsylvania than people really realize.
And I want to comment on that. That's another reason why I'm not big on moving to L.A., because there is a thriving film industry in Pittsburgh. Primarily, or not primarily, but point in case, they filmed the Batman movie there, the last Batman movie. And every week it seems like they're filming another movie down there. So it's huge there, and it's a beautiful city. Not to mention, not to get sidetracked, Johnstown is a wonderful place to film movies in. Everybody is friendly and supportive, and me personally, it's a personal thing. I think it's a beautiful city.
I agree with you. That's why we have Johnstown Live. Johnstown Live is all about the positives of Johnstown, the Johnstown area, Cambria, Somerset County, and you're one of those positives, Tom. That's why you're on Johnstown Live.
Yes.
It's kind of like this is your life.
Ever since I've been a kid, you hear, when you're a kid, kids kind of lament there's not much to do. But there is. I think...
Oh, that's wrong. There's a lot to do.
There's a lot to do. And I think if you're a particularly imaginative person or you have a very active inner life, in your mind, Johnstown is one of the best places because it's very peaceful, it's very beautiful, and not to mention very scenic. One of the things about Rising Fear that anytime you're a director, you're looking for scenic. Take the steel mills downtown. I wanted to film in them, of course, but I couldn't get that privilege. So what I did was one morning, there's a scene in Rising Fear where the character escapes from this big facility. So I went down there about 4 o'clock in the morning, just as the sun was coming up, and I climbed up. I set the camera up and had it running, and then I climbed up the fence and over the fence, and then I climbed back over.
Would that not be breaking and entering, Tom?
Yeah, well, it was a while ago, and that's over and done with. But in the movie, it's this great shot of me coming back down the fence, and it has this illusion that I'm leaving the steel mills, and it's not a steel mill in the movie, but it looks like really cool. So
I'm with you. I can relate to that. You are listening to Johnstown Live with Ralph DeMarco on 1490 WNTJ News Talk.